going to jail, how to make sure that your past does not equal your future, and becoming a millionaire millennial with a legendary life, and more. All right. Hey ho. Let's go. Welcome to this episode of Legends and Losers. I'm so glad you could join us today. We've got an extraordinary guest on our show today, the legendary Matty A. And I'll introduce you to him in a minute. He's really become one of my favorite guys and an extraordinary young entrepreneur. Before we get to Matty, a couple things. First, let me share with you an amazing experience I had this past Sunday. It was the paddle out for Jack O'Neill. And for those of you who don't know Jack, Jack was the entrepreneur and inventor and category designer behind the surfing wetsuit. And he went on to create the O'Neill Company and become just a beloved person in Santa Cruz and throughout the surf world and entrepreneurial world for that matter. And so he died a few weeks back, as you may recall. We talked about it on a prior episode. And when surfers die, it is very common for their families to organize a ceremony in the water. And that's called a paddle out. And a group of friends and family go out, form a circle, and a ceremony is performed. Well, this past weekend in Santa Cruz at Pleasure Point, where Jack lived, there was a paddle out. And best we could tell, it set the world record for paddle outs. Somewhere between 2,000 and 3,000 people put their wetsuits on, most of them O'Neill, and got on their boards and paddled out in front of Jack's house and participated in a very touching service in acknowledgement of an extraordinary and, if you will, legendary life well lived. And the cool thing about it, Santa Cruz is a sleepy little beach town, and the whole town mobilized to celebrate really one of the most storied people, certainly in the city's history, in the town's history, and someone who's just beloved by pretty much everybody in Santa Cruz and in the surfing world. And there was, hard to tell, but I don't know, if there was 2,000 to 3,000 people in the water, there must have been 2 or 3, maybe even 4x that up on the beach and up on the bluff and on the beaches. And so to see the entire town come out in this one kind of concentrated area to celebrate the life of a legendary man and to dedicate the park next to his house as Jack O'Neill Park was an extraordinary thing to be a part of. And you might have seen some of the pictures online, some of the drone shots from the air of all these people surrounding these boats, celebrating Jack's life. But it really makes you reflect on life. And hey, we all get to go when we're done. And we've had some loss in our life recently this summer, and so maybe it's just been present on my mind. But the thing it really, of course, puts into perspective is tomorrow is promised to no one. And so thank you, Jack. And I just ask you to remember that, mostly for me in my life as a reminder, as well as for you. Tomorrow is promised to no one. So let's make today legendary. Speaking of legendary, I've got another legendary story for you if you have a second. A few weeks ago, several weeks ago now, I was in Las Vegas, and I was there for NetSuite's Suite World Conference, and many thousands of people there. They're as you probably know, a big software company, and they're really the pioneer in accounting and ERP software for the cloud. And so they had this big event in Vegas, and the next morning I was flying out, and I was sitting in the airport waiting to get on my Southwest flight. I love Southwest Airlines. Anyway, I'm sitting there, and I had a whole bunch of Legends and Losers shit I needed to get done. So I pop open my laptop, and I don't know, I don't know what I was working on, but whatever I was working on. And there was a guy sitting next to me. And as I was working on my stuff, I could, when somebody's you can feel somebody watching you over your shoulder. So I could kind of feel this guy. And finally he says to me, "Hey, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but it looks like you're doing something really cool. What are you doing?" And so I started to share with him about Legends and Losers and a little bit about my life. And so he and I started to have a conversation. Turns out this guy's a lawyer, has worked in Silicon Valley for years. We know many of the same people. And so we start having a conversation about entrepreneurship and technology and category design and all the good shit. So we have this conversation, we exchange business cards, and kind of that was that. And on we go. When the plane lands in San Jose, I'm walking off the plane, and this second gentleman, so not the guy I was talking to, but some other guy who I don't know, turns out his name is Wendell Myers. And he comes walking up to me as I'm walking out of the airport in San Jose after getting on the plane. He says, "Excuse me, I'm sorry to bother you. You're Christopher Lochhead, right?" And I said, "Yeah." And he said, "Yeah, I know all about you, your book and your podcast and so forth." And I was like, "Okay." And I thought, well, maybe he was at the speech, the NetSuite World Talk or something like that. Well, it turns out he was sitting behind me and the guy who I had the conversation with, waiting to get on the Southwest flight. And he says to me, "Look, I'm sorry, but I couldn't help myself. I just eavesdropped on your conversation." And I'm thinking, well, if you like eavesdropping on that conversation, you're probably going to love Legends and Losers. Anyway, it turns out that Wendell Myers is Professor Wendell Myers, and he is a professor at DeVry University. And as a result of him eavesdropping in on that conversation, he asked me if I would speak at their commencement on July 14th in Hayward, California. And I said yes. And, there are those times in life where the universe just sort of talks to you. And I just figured, well, this guy overheard the conversation for whatever reason, was interested in it, and had sort of the moxie, if you will, to just walk up to me. Of course, didn't know me at all in the airport, reach out his hand, tell me about his students and the great work that the teachers and the professionals at DeVry University do to try to make a difference, and asked me if I'd come and do that. So on July 14th in Hayward, California, thank you, Wendell Myers. I will be incredibly honored as a guy who got thrown out of high school to speak at the commencement of for the folks at DeVry University. So thank you, Wendell, and I'll look forward to seeing you July 14th. All right. Matt Aitchinson, or as he's known in podcast world, Matty A, has become a very good friend of mine. I met him through the Tim Road at One Life Fully Lived. And he just really has impressed me as an extraordinary young man. And when Play Bigger, the book came out, he was kind enough to have me on his smash hit podcast, the Millionaire Mindcast. And so we've just gotten to know each other really well over the last couple of years. And his extraordinary story that really sits at the heart of everything we talk about here, which is how do you, if you believe what we believe, which is you can't be a legend without being a loser, and that all of us have moments of failure in our lives, and it's what we do in those moments that separates us. And so as a teenager, Matt Aitchinson found himself expelled from high school in his senior year, and he had to get his shit together. So he tried to get his shit together, and later on he did make it to college. But while he was in college, he found his dumbass in jail facing felony charges of all things. And it's interesting, when you meet Matt today, if your experience with him is like mine, you'll be knocked over to think he was ever in jail for being, as my mother might say, a ruffian. And, as Matt would say, he was on a path to being a loser or losery. However, he decided enough was enough and he was going to get his shit together. And since then, he's gone on to become a millennial entrepreneur, a 7-figure real estate investor, a very sought after public speaker. He's got a giant hit podcast called the Millionaire Mindcast with Matty A. And he's an avid adventurist, backcountry, any kind of adventure. When he was here with me a little while ago, we went surfing together and had a great time. And so if there's adventure involved, you'll probably find Matty. And most importantly, he's a proud husband and father. Now, our dialogue with the legendary Matty A.
There's a lot of mutual mentorship going on, and I think that's what you see a lot of like legendary players doing, is they're humble enough to know that, one, they have a massive value to add, but two, that they have a lot to learn, going back to your master and sensei thing. And so I like the idea of this whole mutual mentorship. I mean, he could teach me tons in martial arts, the mindset behind martial arts, the principles of how to be a leader, a lot of different things that I've not been exposed to based on his experience. And that's where I
And so
love
what
the
are you calling this? Mutual what?
mutual mentorship. It's like a cross-pollination. It's like both
And
are bringing value to the table. Therefore, both are getting value from it.
so
Therefore,
you're
it's a
saying,
mutual mentorship.
yeah, that the old paradigm of sort of master and slave, if you will,
Yeah.
student and master,
Yep.
um, is maybe not, or is one way to look at it, maybe.
Well,
But
I
you're saying,
think there's always the inferior and the superior.
yeah,
That's the old, or at least the general mindset for a lot of people is like, okay, there's one person here that's the leader, which usually there is, but like you said, those roles can fluctuate and change over time, and if you're constantly looking for it. So that's why I learned a ton from him and you. I didn't know that you were such a fucking crazy mofo in the martial arts space that in that 24 hours, it got me thinking differently about things, which that was some mutual mentorship that just happened like within 24 hours, less than 24 hours, 8 hours.
yeah, it's interesting, this idea of mutual mentorship. Yeah, why does it have to be, uh, some sort of ranking?
Exactly. Well, and I think now with us being in the information age, right? Back then, I was having a conversation this morning with a kid I'm mentoring, and he goes, I wish they would have taught this shit in
When you
schools.
call someone a kid that you're mentoring, how old is the kid?
He's 21. He's 21, and he's learning how to
Awesome.
flip houses and invest, and he's doing really good. So I'm mentoring him, but he
How
was
many
like,
kids do you mentor? I'm going to interrupt you a lot. Sorry.
oh no, this is good. I like the right now I have probably like 5 to 10 people that are
Wow,
relatively close on a consistent base to what I'm doing, and or I'm invested in what they're doing.
that's great.
Some of them majority of them are paying me, but it's still,
Wow.
yeah.
So they pay you cash? Is it so? Wait a minute. I didn't know that. So you got your real estate business,
Mm-hmm.
but now you're what do you call yourself? A coach or?
Yeah, I would say, just, you could say coach. I like to think of it as mentor, because I always say to my clients, I'm learning by being involved in what it is that you're doing. So thank you for making me a part of your journey. I'm here to help guide you on clarity, strategy, and most importantly, accountability that gets you into action to seeing the needle get moved forward. So it's more of
You,
a
you,
mentorship relationship.
you sound so fucking nice. Do you know that? You're so sweet.
I'm very appreciative. It's people are paying me money to give my advice on experiences and shit that I've been exposed to.
Well, and when I was first getting to know you, you remind me a lot in this domain, certainly, of my friend Bob Evans, who was on one of the very early Legends and Losers. He's a tech journalism icon and a very thought-provoking kind of guy. Anyway, you remind me of him in the context of when I first met you, you were so damn nice. I just thought, is this guy up to something? Or, is this thing for real? Like, is this guy for real? Because uh, you're a big, strong dude, and you're a handsome guy, and so forth. And you could easily be very arrogant, and yet you're this big sweetheart, this big teddy bear.
I tried that previously, and it didn't work out so well for me. So
No,
I learned through a few
what did you try?
humbling experiences, just being somebody that I'm not. When I was getting into trouble and doing dumb shit with my friends back in high school and smoking and drinking and fighting and whatever else we were getting into, thinking you're invincible at that age, it just wasn't who I was. I always say my video didn't match my audio, and my audio in my own mind and
Your
in my
video, hold on,
world.
slow down there, handsome. Your video didn't match your audio.
Correct. My video, my actions,
Yeah.
the footage that was playing out in my life was not in alignment with the audio, the voices and the things that I had told myself and told to other people that I was or wanted to accomplish or was going to do. They weren't aligned, and therefore,
How old were you when you figured that out?
oh gosh, when I really faced the reality of it, it was when I was sitting in jail facing a felony charge, thinking that I was going to spend 10 years wasting away. And that was when I realized that every single thing that I was doing, I needed to be held accountable for. And now this was the first time that I was really being held accountable at a
You
really
were
fucking high
literally being
level.
held accountable.
And so that was when I realized that,
At what age, Maddie?
I was 19.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was
So
my
you were kind
first
of
year of college.
you were a hellion
Yeah.
as a teenager, right?
Yep. And
And do you mind telling me what the felony situation was?
it was fighting. It was fighting.
Just
I had been in many a fights, kind of, random street brawls back in the day with the group of people I was hanging around. You talk about the people you spend the most time with. Well, at that point in time, I was the one token white kid hanging with the brothers who were playing basketball all year round. But a lot of my friends came from broken homes. They didn't have good role models, or they didn't have, they had strong moms, but their moms worked all the time. Therefore, they didn't oversee or care what their sons were doing as long as they were in sports. Right. And my family was always the one that was kind of the house. We took everybody in. We did the sleepovers at our house. We played ball till, 10, 11 o'clock at night when we were younger. And then, as we got older, 10, 11 o'clock at night turned into other activities. Right. So
and the hours probably got a little bit later.
They got a little later. And so a lot of this.
Does anything good happen after 2 a.m.?
It depends where you're at and who you're with, I guess.
I mean, decision making, that's not the time for decision making.
Yeah, they usually say nothing good comes after when the clock strikes midnight. But for us,
I saw there was a tile floating around the internet. I might have even reposted it. It said something like 5 a.m. The time when legendary people are either coming home or getting up.
Yep, exactly.
It was something like that anyway. Sorry, I interrupted you again. It's going to happen some more.
I'm getting used to this theme. It's okay. I'm used to this. So at that point in time, that was, if not knowing that, let's say that, let's just use the Jim Rohn quote, you are the sum of the five you spend the most time with. Well, who I was spending the most time with.
Hold on, slow down. Let's get that one. You're the sum
of the five you spend the most time with.
And
right?
you, of course, mean the 5 people.
Yep, 5 people. And I think the environment plays a big part of that too, right? The physical environment that you're around. But the individuals that I was, I've always been a big believer in, you hang around 9 other, people that are fighting, smoking, drinking, and not doing positive things with your life. Most likely, you're going to become the 10th. If you're hanging around 9 other purposeful millionaires that are giving back, care about their health, are intentional about living a legendary life, you're probably going to become the 10th, right?
Have you also noticed hot people hang out with other hot people?
So what the hell are you and I? Why are we friends then?
Well, I should say, why are you friends with me? Because I got a face for radio.
That's what everybody's always told me too. So I guess this podcasting thing's working for us, right?
You're a handsome bastard. You look.
I clean up all right, but at the end of the day, I'm all bum at heart.
No, you're all brawny and awesome looking and shit. Don't give me any of that crap, Olo.
So that was
hanging out with bad people.
Yeah, and it wasn't necessarily, they weren't bad people. They just didn't have bad things. We didn't have leadership in our life. There was a lack of leadership. And you can say there's a lack of leadership in corporate America. There's a lack of leadership in schools. There's a lack of leadership. There's a lack of leadership in general for 99% of the human population, right? We just don't know what we don't know. In my opinion, this is all coming from my paradigm, my exposure, based on what I was exposed to. And I was fortunate to, be in a lower middle class family that moved up to middle class, that over time, through hard work, through doing some of the right things consistently over a long period of time, no lightning strikes, but the slow and steady, be exposed to, some stuff that majority of the people I grew up with were never exposed to and still aren't. Now,
what kind of stuff, Maddie?
I mean, I'm talking anywhere from leadership on how to be a great employee, leadership on how to be a great parent, leadership on how to build wealth in your life and be intentional of what that looks like to live. I talk a lot about the whole life millionaires, not just be, my goal, at least my definition of wealth is not just to be financially free and make all kinds of money. That gives me more resources and more options, more choice equals freedom for me. But at the end of the day, if I'm bankrupt in my relationships, if I'm a bad friend, I'm a bad community member, I'm a bad dad, I'm bankrupt in my health, I don't care about my health, I'm bankrupt in, my spirituality, and I feel like shit about who I am every single day just to go out and make the money. That's not what I call wealthy. That's, financially wealthy, but lacking abundance and wealth in many other areas of your life. So for me, when I think about that, none of that stuff was exposed to us. And it wasn't until I started hanging around with people like you and people like Timmy and, other amazing individuals that I wanted to model after, that I saw was a good way for me to kind of hack my way to success, was to model after other individuals and be exposed to, some things. I'll say this. I had a few people, because we all make mistakes in life, right? I got expelled from high school. I got arrested in college. There were a few points in my life that the fork in the road was right here. I could have went this way. I luckily went the other way. And the reason, if I were to attribute it, is yes, a lot of hard work, getting focused, doing what needed to be done. But I was weak in those moments. And I had someone who believed in me and lent me their belief in me when I didn't have the belief in myself. And that's what a lot of people are lacking.
Who was that person, or was it different people at different times?
Different people at different times. But I can say the common thread were both my parents. Both my parents, through those challenges and turbulent times in my life, knew that was not the person that I was, or knew that mistake wasn't going to define me if I chose not to, so I had some very key critical moments of short injected wisdom and care and love that a lot of people don't get. There's a lot of people in this world, in this country, all over the place that do not have those support systems, and they're left to fend for themselves.
And why do you think they supported you no matter what, when you were behaving in a way that maybe some people might have interpreted it as not worthy of support, shall we say?
Well, first and foremost, unconditional love. I think when you love people and you believe in them, because there gets to be a point in time where you put forth the effort to believe in somebody and to try and help them when they're not willing to help themselves. They saw that I was willing to help myself. And I look at all of my greatest mentors. So they knew, even though you
were behaving badly and doing dumb stuff and getting into fights and doing, idiotic shit at school, that they still believed in your core values, in that
Correct.
Ultimately you did want to design a legendary life, so to speak.
Yep. Yeah, because that's what my audio was saying, right? It's not what my video was, how my video was playing out. So that's one of the things why I love being in the space that I'm in now, is I get to have these conversations. I get to be exposed to this stuff every single day because I choose to. It took me a lot of work to get there, and it continues to grow and expand. But at the end of the day, if you're not exposed to it, if you don't have access to it, then you're probably never going to lead and go in that direction, right? You're just going to be tricked into playing small. And so that's why I love what we get to do with the podcast and the communities that we're building. We get to add value. Yeah, it's great. Selfishly, we grow because of it. We get to network because of it. But more importantly, to get the messages that I'm sure you guys are getting from your podcast, from the people in my community. One thing, one conversation, because that's all it took for me to have a mindset shift and lead me on a whole new path. And being able to do that now in the information age that we're in, to be a small piece of that contributing pie, it feels pretty damn good. And so that's why I love to be doing this kind of stuff on a daily basis.
You're on fire. You're on freaking fire.
I knew I was hanging out with you today, man.
Yeah, you come to bring it.
Gotta come with my guns loaded.
I love it, Matty. I love it. Your enthusiasm, your passion, and you're clearly a guy who has unpacked a lot of Samsonites in your life.
Just a few.
Right?
Few. Yeah.
Because 18 years ago, you were a loser sitting in a jail cell, right? It was 18, 19?
I was 19 years old. So that was,
excuse me, 10 years ago.
Yeah, 9 years ago, 10 years ago.
8, 9, yeah, 9, 10 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, 9 years ago. And, sitting here in my seat, I go, 9 years. 9 years goes by. Here, I'll get my grandfather. 9 years goes by in about 15 minutes.
Yeah.
And
now
so,
looking back, it does. Shit.
Right?
Time flies.
It's amazing what you can get accomplished if you get your mind to it.
Yep, it's so true. I feel now looking back, and now I have a little tiny piece of wisdom, experience of wisdom through, my last decade, I would say, right? I'm turning 29 in May, which I'm stoked to, enter my last year of my 20s. A lot of my friends are like, oh, we're getting old now. I'm going to my 10-year reunion this
Getting
weekend
old,
in
my
high school.
ass. Yeah.
and
Good.
one of the things that I actually worked through this limiting belief, because I had this fear of death. When my stepmom died when I was 17, she was very, very healthy, never smoked a day in her life, ate really healthy, exercised, just your textbook individual. You're like, they're not going to get sick, right? And then you have that individual who's chain smoking every single day and they live till they're 90. So she was one of those people where she got diagnosed on a Saturday with a rare form of leukemia. I mean, went in like, this is normal. Like, hey, I'm not feeling, something feels kind of weird. I'm going in. Within an hour, they're doing emergency tracheotomy on her. And within about 2 hours, the doctor tells us her diagnosis and says that she has about a week to live. They've never seen this strain of cancer before. They don't know what to expect. Say your goodbyes. So basically, I lived in the hospital with my dad for about 5.5 days. She passed away, diagnosed on a Thursday, passed away, or diagnosed on a Saturday, passed away on a Thursday. And I was 17. It was my junior year of high school. And I remember thinking like, it rocked my world, right? And secondly, I remember thinking like, how the hell does somebody who does it all right, textbook, does it all right, get screwed out of, at 41 years old, out of so much of their life? And so for me, I was like, holy shit, I can do everything right and still get screwed. And so if I'm not living my best life now, and I look back when my ticket is called and say, fuck, I wish I would have done all these things, I'm going to be so mad at myself. And so at that point, I went to almost like being immature and not very wise, going to the far end of the spectrum of being like, fuck it, right? Whatever. If I get called, I get called.
Open bar, mofos. Let's go, right?
Exactly.
We're gonna burn this.
We're gonna
burn this mother down.
Yep. So that was kind of the young and reckless mindset that I had, and then coupling that with my environment, coupling it with some of the, extracurricular factors that were in play, as well as, the peers that I was hanging around all the time. That was somewhat of, playing with fire, and I got results that led me down the, the path of fire, and so when I turned my life around, now looking back on it, I've addressed a lot of stuff that has to do with my mindset and fear around dying. And I'll tell you now, by playing full out every single day, we had at a One Life thing, a dinner, Jeff Hoffman, billionaire, Priceline founder, was sitting across the table from me. And I said, what's your definition of success, Jeff? And he goes, my definition of success is when I ask somebody that exact same question, they are able to reflect back on their life and say, damn, that was one hell of a ride. That was one hell of a ride. I fucked up a lot. I had a whole lot of success, but I can say that I didn't leave anything, off the table. I threw it all on. And that's what I want to do.
And so if thinking back, I mean, 9 years, not that long, right?
Yeah.
In the context and perspective you have now, Matty, how would you say all of the losery, all the losing, all of the behaving like a loser, even though fundamentally you and your parents knew you weren't, but the audio and the video were disconnected. When you think about all of that losing, that bad behavior, that being like a loser, how much do you think that's contributed, or maybe in what ways has that contributed to the man we see before us today?
Yeah, you said to kind of retie this all in together from, the first question, and saying, you're a nice guy. And I was like, well, it wasn't always that way. Well, that's why I choose to be this way now, because I've been the opposite.
So let me interrupt you, because that's just so great. So when did it become clear to you, Matty, that you could actually choose to be a different way than the way that you were?
It was that moment. I had my oh shit moment in life was when I was going to make the call to my dad when I was in jail. Dad, bail me out, help me out, bro. You know, that call, and thinking that after our conversation, he had said something that really stuck with me. And I've heard Tony Robbins say it. I've heard a lot of different people say it in different ways. But he said, son, everybody makes mistakes. How you respond to that mistake is going to tell me a lot about your character and who I think you are, and also what the next 10 years of your life is going to look like. And that choice is up to you. And if you look at this entire situation as your mistakes are like the rear view mirror, right? It's there to remind you of what's going on behind you as you move forward. But if all you did was focus on the rear view mirror, you're going to lose sight. You're going to lose vision of what's going on in front of you, that big picture windshield, and you're going to crash.
So, Matty, you know, there's an interesting thing in what you're saying, many, but one that's speaking loudly, which is sometimes when you hear people talk about or you read about this term we have called personality. You know, if somebody says to me, "Oh, well, can you describe Matty's personality?" I'm going to talk about attributes that I notice in you.
Mm-hmm.
And so sometimes when people talk about personality, there's almost an unconscious, unsaid that your personality is your personality. Like, you know, in my case, my hairline is my hairline. In other words, they talk about personality almost like it's a fixed thing. Like you have 5 fingers and you were given this personality.
Right.
And then interestingly, very quickly, you use the word character. And that to me is also a word that is like personality in that sometimes there's an unspoken or an undeclared that you know, your character is your character. But so with all that said, you chose a different personality. You chose a different set of core values to create a new character.
Yep.
Yes?
Yeah, absolutely. We all have that choice. That's the thing. So,
but why do so many of us behave like we don't?
Well, so I like this model. It was something that I've been fortunate to be exposed to a ton of personal development. Going back to, my mom was dragging me to real estate investing seminars when I was like 12, 13, and 14.
Your industry is all about all that shit, right? I mean, you guys, there isn't a motivational speaker or personal development guru that you guys in the real estate industry, you eat that shit breakfast, lunch, and dinner, don't you?
And I feel
why is that? Is it
I think for sales professionals, if you're in a sales industry, if we're gonna go there for one quick second, if you're in a sales industry, sales is heavy mindset because you're going out and selling yourself on a daily basis, and your livelihood depends on your ability to sell. And therefore, if we can keep your mindset, your motivation, and your action taking at a high level, which is generally done through the exposure to personal development, I think that's why you'll see a lot of sales and training companies be pulling in great motivational speakers all the time because of that exact reason.
Is that a very awesome way of saying when you have your ass kicked all day, every day by people telling you to go fuck yourself and no.
Yeah, pretty much.
That there's a serious requirement for a lot of motivation, stimulation, and whatever kind of libations that as they may be required.
And it's also an industry where you're constantly putting yourself out there. And as you put yourself out there and expose yourself to the FUs and, you know, the no to get the one yes after 50,000 no's, that takes a toll on people mentally. So I think, you know, that's why you'll see more people in sales industries exposed to leadership development, personal development, stuff like that.
And I'm curious, Matty, so you have the aha, you say, to quote the Big Lebowski, this aggression will not stand, man. I am not
Yep.
going to spend my life in this jail cell. And I'm going to be the person my parents have told me I am, right?
Though it wasn't who they told me I am, it's who they knew I wasn't. Right?
Got it.
It's who they knew I wasn't.
But one way or another, they were communicating to you that,
yep,
we firmly believe you are this, not that.
correct. And I knew that I had that choice in that moment to continue down the path that led me to where I currently was at, and that would potentially obviously lead to further repercussions, or I could learn. And I just had something click in that moment where I said, I was looking around, and literally, I mean, this is what I'm seeing through my eyes, painting this picture. I wake up out of a blackout, and
that's how the experience felt.
I wake up out of a blackout.
You were actually blacked out. So you had the shit kicked out of you.
No, I kicked the shit out of somebody else, or I got into an altercation.
An altercation, I like that.
And I was the one who was arrested for it, not the other individual. And due to the injuries that occurred. And
translation, you beat the shit out of him, so you got to go to jail.
Felony injury is assault and battery is what it was. That's what I was facing.
And there was no claiming self-defense.
Correct. That wasn't coming into play in this
particular
situation. And so I remember coming out of my blackout. I looked.
When you say blackout, though, what do you mean?
I did not remember getting into this fight.
Oh, okay.
I did not remember.
Drinking, or did you just?
I was intoxicated for sure.
So it was the booze that was probably.
I was at UC Santa Barbara, 19-year-old freshman year, having a blast.
I hate that they call it liquid courage, because it's not. It's actually, it's like, to me, it's liquid cowardice. If you're somebody who gets drunk and picks fights, there's nothing courageous about getting drunk, and actually there's nothing courageous about picking fights, period. But
nothing.
The macho bullshit about, I'm going to drink some liquid courage, like,
yeah,
go fuck yourself, liquid courage. Anyways,
no, it's
But what we're really curious about is, okay, so all this is going on. Why do you choose to be an entrepreneur? A, and then B, why a real estate entrepreneur? But let's start with, there are things you could have done. You could have gone maybe back to school, or, there's a lot of things.
I finished schooling. I did. I finished schooling. So so long story short, the gentleman who was pressing charges, I was able to basically, diffuse the situation in the sense of, when I took full ownership and said, look, I fucked up, dude. I fucked up, and I take full ownership of this. I can understand why you'd want to press charges on me. I also am asking for a second chance, and here's why I think I deserve it and want to turn my life around. And he was studying pre-law to be an attorney at UC Santa Barbara. And so this kid wanted to just screw me over. After that conversation,
well, hold on. He didn't want to screw you over.
He wanted to serve justice.
Yeah,
how about that? And he gave me that second chance, dropped all the charges. So when I got out of school,
not like he was an older, quote unquote, more mature person
22-year-old.
Yeah. So what was it that you did, and then maybe even more importantly, what was it about him that allowed you guys to connect and ultimately have him drop the charges?
Well, one, I'd known him previously through mutual friends and stuff like that. But when I got out of that situation and realized that I had, I was going to be going through court and going through this entire process to, basically defend myself. This guy, I went through and just said, I'm going to take full ownership of this situation and see. I know that there are things out of my control in this situation, and I know that there are things in my control in this situation. And the one thing that I wanted to make sure that I showed up as best as I possibly could in this shitty situation I got myself in was to show up as best as I could, as humble as I could, and also to take ownership, because we all make mistakes. A lot of times it's just so easy to, oh, well, I was drinking and I didn't know what I was doing. Oh, I was doing this. Oh, I felt this way, right? It's so easy to point the finger instead of taking ownership and be like, where's my DNA on this? I fucked up. How do I learn from this, move forward, and make sure that the people I may have harmed in this mistake are righted? as best as I possibly can. So I took ownership of that, and I sought him out, and I reached out to him, and he heard me out. And I honestly, would actually like to reach out to him at this point in time, because I'd look at where my life potentially could have gone, and that teeter-totter, that tight roping with one direction or another.
That's right. The puck bounces one different way.
Yep. So long story short, that got dropped, and I went, whoa, okay, no more second chances. I don't even want to have to ask for a second chance. It's time for me to get intentional with my life. And I knew I wanted to be somebody that added value to others, because I've always been a connector. I've never been this aggressive asshole that walks around. I've always been a connector. I've always been social. I just made some poor choices in moments that I was vulnerable due to particular things. That led me to saying, that's not going to happen anymore. I want to be in control. I want to.
And why entrepreneurship?
Entrepreneurship checked a handful of boxes for me. So when I got out of jail, I basically said, I'm going to work every single day. I'm going to surround myself with the right people, and I'm going to minimize or completely remove myself from any influences that were not supporting my goals and what I was telling myself. The video had to match the audio now.
Yeah, you knew you had to disconnect from the crowd you were hanging with.
So I edited my peer group.
We become who we hang out with, right?
Birds of a feather flock together. So I edited my peer group.
You edited your peer group. That's great.
Which was a fucking tough thing to do. I'll tell you what, when you have a friend, a mom, somebody, whatever and there's many different relationships in many capacities who you love and care about, but are not supporting your goals and aren't aligned with your goals. That's a hard conversation to have and or have multiple times and or take the actual actions to remove those influences from your life. So that was a tough process.
How long did that take, man?
It took me a good, probably solid year, because what I did was I said, when you say yes to something, you say no to something else, right? When you say no to something, so I started saying no more to those things. And I said yes to other things, which was filling my time with work. So I went and worked for, I started as a cold caller for this guy working.
A real estate guy.
No, he was selling life annuities. And had a small little brokerage down in Santa Barbara.
What's a life annuity? Is that life insurance?
Yeah, so he was selling retirement plans to certificated, and so basically CalSTRS and CalPERS
with a certificate, or what the fuck is certificated?
I'm using some proper lingo.
You're laying down the lingo.
Here, right?
Yeah, okay. Well, go slow. Some of us didn't graduate.
CalSTRS and CalPERS employees. So basically firefighters and police officers, teachers, individuals like that. He would offer retirement plans for individuals that were
purpose-built and government-sponsored.
Exactly.
Got it. Okay.
So I was cold calling for him. And then long story short,
just cold. You were the person calling me at home to sell me this.
Setting appointments. Then I basically worked my way up to being the top CRM caller, and over the next 3.5 years worked my way up to being basically his right-hand man, and him wanting me to come on and be his lead person, take over his book of business. And I realized that one, it wasn't the space that I was passionate about, but I was able to be in close proximity. And that was the key to all of this, which really exposed me firsthand to entrepreneurship. Was he was the top dog. He was making maybe $1.2, $1.3 a year himself as the sole dude.
Million.
Yep. And 5 to 7 employees in the office at all times. And so I got to see how he was running this small business and see how he was funding the lifestyle that he, was living. And it made me realize that I wanted to be an entrepreneur, and both my parents being in corporate America forever and, basically just being another number that was within an organization that really truly didn't give a shit about them, didn't know their last name, didn't know their birthday, didn't know, what their kids' names were or what they were interested in, right? These are the big corporations that I know you've played and dealt with a lot in many capacities. And I realized that after seeing all of that, with little appreciation, little flexibility, and not a lot of wealth to show for, that was a big thing for me. I wanted
So you
to
thought
pursue entrepreneurship.
you saw your parents work all these years in good corporate jobs,
Yep.
and you saw a meaningful difference between on the economic side what was going on with them and what was going on with this mentor of yours.
And it really challenged me to think about, what did I want?
And
And
isn't it interesting how important it is that we can be close to or touch, or in your case, work directly with on an ongoing basis, somebody that we can model.
yep.
Because it's one thing to read about it in a book, but it's a whole other thing to have somebody in your life that you can model. Or even, it's one of the things, of course, we're hoping to do is create a platform for dialogue, and dialogue in a way that, this may sound like a funny word to use, but that's a lot more intimate than most of the standard bullshit you hear, particularly on any kind of a business show.
Yep.
Can we have a authentic dialogue about business and life at the same time? Because the reality is, these quote unquote business decisions that you're making them because of who
They
you
go hand in
are and
hand.
what you want in your life.
Yep.
Right. And so this disconnect between my professional life and my life has always seemed insane to me, because we just have one life. And the
Right.
reality is, you're making the life choices are driving the career and entrepreneurial choices, are they not?
Yeah. Well, a lot of people talk about nowadays the work-life balance. At the end of the day, it comes back to the common denominator is your life balance, right? So they all go together.
I've never loved the term. I understand, of course, what people are trying to get to when they have the conversation, and I think it's a good conversation to have. But as somebody who tries to be a student of language and listen to languaging, because words, a demarcation point in language creates a demarcation point in thinking, which creates a demarcation point in actions.
Yep.
And so this work-life balance, the thing I don't love about those words together is it suggests that you have a work life and that you have a life.
And that they're separate.
Yes. And that just seems like bullshit to me.
Yeah.
It's like, I'll never forget this. This all started to change for me about a decade ago. And I'll never forget that I had an aha about this. Al and I and some other folks were in Whistler skiing. And at the end of the trip, we had breakfast at the same place every day before we got up on the mountain. And so at the end of the trip, it was our last day. And we had the same gal who was our server every morning for breakfast. And so at the end of the week, we shared with her that we were leaving, and it was our last day, and that how great she'd been, and we had a nice chat, and so forth and so on. And so as we got up to leave, she said something like, "I really hope you've had a nice vacation." And I remember it was the first time in my life where I thought, I'm not here in Whistler on vacation. Well, technically, by most people's definition of vacation, sure.
Right.
But that's not the experience I was having. The experience I was having is, this is my life. And right now in my life, we're in Whistler. And so, you understand my point.
Yeah.
The work-life balance sets a context or a mental paradigm that suggests our life is not our life.
It's very true. Now, let me ask you this question. For most people that don't feel or think they have the same resources or accomplishments or means to mold the two of those together, right? They feel like they have to be separated. Like, for example, 90% of people, 99% of people would say Chris was on vacation. He was having fun with his buddies. He wasn't working. He was, living carefree. And therefore that's considered a vacation. You're saying, no, this is what I do. Right. So when does someone, can someone cross that threshold? Is it a mental thing?
to be clear, I want to be, because the distinction's important here, Maddie. I'm not saying that I spend all my time doing things that most people would call a vacation. That's not what I'm saying, although I get to do that a lot, but
Right.
that's not what I'm saying. What I am saying is, it was about a decade ago where I went from a cerebral conversation about this to architecting my life this way, where there's just no distinction between work or some other thing and work. It's just my life. The people I work with are people in my life. The people I spend time with outside of work are people in my life. And so for me, I think what I got was, for me, this context of work-life balance is actually disempowering, because it sets a paradigm of my life is here and my life is there, and that can very easily lead to, well, I'm working, I do this work here so that I can do this. My work life is not my real life. That's the thing I do to get to my real life. And what the undeclared context of work-life balance is how do I minimize the amount of work I do, or minimize the impact of my work, so that I can get away from my work to get to my life.
Yeah.
And that, I think, is a fucked up context, because it's just our life.
Mm-hmm.
And so to me, that's why it's so important to try to have a dialogue around how do we design and ultimately live a legendary life and build a legendary business / career, because it's the same fuck thing.
And you know what? It's funny. I go back to thinking about, this seems to be a conversation that I have so consistently, I think, because I don't want to say I'm obsessed with it, but I'm so focused on the importance of me having control of designing this intentional life, that when I don't take ownership of that, it almost like makes my skin crawl, because I know that I can design the life that I want to design by modeling after, hey, look at fucking Chris Lochhead. This guy has designed an amazing life that is his definition of a legendary life, but he's done it. Hey, look at David Osborne. Hey, look at Tim Rode, right? Like, we all have this vision in our head if we give ourselves enough time and space to actually think through it and actually gain clarity on it. But when we do that, when we gain clarity, then it becomes, what's our strategy? Then it becomes, what's the action plan of the strategy? And then let's go out and let's go fucking execute on it, right? So when we all do that and continue to have these conversations of lifestyle design, which you and I have talked a lot about that, that's why I became an entrepreneur. That is why I became an entrepreneur, to just circle back around to the conversation of corporate, do what, many are told to do, or be an entrepreneur. For me, it was, okay, I want the freedom and flexibility to design the schedule and the company and the product and the people I get to communicate and hang out with. I want the freedom and flexibility to do that and be my own boss. I want the ability to have no ceiling of what I can achieve financially or professionally each and every year based on my role. I want to have the ability to choose who I do business with and get to have fun with and get to share experiences with. I want to have the ability to give back to my community and the people that I love and enjoy and admire. And most importantly, the fifth and kind of, the one final thing of why I chose real estate in the space of real estate was I wanted to build wealth. I don't want to just go chase income and transactions and clients. I want to build relationships, and I want to build relationships in a space that equal wealth. And that doesn't just mean financial dollars. Wealth goes far beyond dollars for me. And so when I checked off all these boxes and I thought about what space can I create wealth in, entrepreneurship was the big umbrella. Then figuring out what my vehicle or my space was going to be, figured that out.
And so how did you go from annuities to real estate?
It's kind of a funny story. So I moved home because Santa Barbara was a small job market, and it was either a retirement community, it had some startups, but very small job market.
Don't they? Isn't it one of those towns where they say you're either newlywed or nearly dead? Isn't it
Pretty
one
much,
of those kinds of
yes,
places?
it is. And one of the most beautiful places in the world. I love Santa Barbara every time I get to go back there, but it didn't have, for me and where I was at in my life, a lot of opportunity. I paid all this money, had this expensive piece of paper I was holding in my hand, wasn't going to use it for shit. And now looking back,
what was your degree in, Matty?
Sociology, business economics.
And you don't think there was any value to getting that education? Is that
No, there 100% was. But if I
okay?
were to look in what I do today,
Right.
on a X's and O's, logistical standpoint, no.
But don't you think?
Not a lot.
I mean, of course, there are many fields where the specifics of what you're learning are incredibly important. So I don't want to sound, mental, but in a lot of ways, isn't going to school. At least a big part of it is learning how to learn,
Yes,
as distinct from the topic or the subject.
I would never change or trade my college experience for anything. And why I am still a very big advocate of college is exposure to life is really what I think about. It is real life, and you have to learn responsibility. You have to learn to prioritize. You have to learn to self-manage, and how you self-manage yourself is a very, very key and strong indicator of what kind of results you're getting in your life. And by going to college, it was most importantly an endurance test mentally.
And now where you are, and you sort of, if we get you to take your head up a little bit and look around, as I know you do a lot. And we go to this, story in the Wall Street Journal in March or April of 2016, declaring a, quote, crisis in American entrepreneurship. And the story goes on to talk about, and I know some people have heard me talk about this ad nauseum, including you, but how we're at the lowest level of entrepreneurship in history, and how more companies die in the U.S. Every week than are born, and how the millennials are on track to be the least entrepreneurial generation in American history. So when you see that, when you hear that, what comes up for you?
There's a few different things. I think that you talk about the big E entrepreneur and the small E entrepreneur, right? And I think that there are a lot of big E entrepreneurs now that aren't necessarily as aligned and or motivated by the right things for the right things. Therefore, they're sometimes in the wrong space. They have the wrong intention behind why they're doing what they're doing. So when shit goes bad, because we all know that in business, in life, entrepreneurship, relationships, health, whatever it is, shit will go bad eventually. And if you don't have the right tools, resources, and environment around you, or the right mindset, when those things happen, specifically in the context of entrepreneurship, which a lot of people don't, they don't continue to pursue on because they're not connected with the reason why they're actually doing what they're doing. They're just doing it to make money. That's one thing that I see a lot of people, they're just doing entrepreneurship for the wrong reasons.
You think that that's a criticism you have of big E entrepreneurs, the Silicon Valley? We raised $200 million because we wrote an awesome carbidingulator, and then we're trying to be a multi-billion-dollar category king. That kind of big E entrepreneur?
I can't speak to that 100% specifically based on, having enough data. I can speak on it based on the individual relationships and people that I've been exposed to in those industries and spaces. So I'm not generalizing.
So you think a lot of entrepreneurs today are too pure financially driven?
100%. And that even though they say they are impact driven, you hear a lot of millennials and influencers talk about impact.
So, it's interesting you bring that up. So I'm not going to say who, because it's totally inappropriate and doesn't matter. But, I grew up in a time and a place where nobody talked about money. You never asked anybody what they made or any of that stuff. Nobody ever talked about what anything cost, or just money was not, you didn't talk to other people, other families about money. And I remember when I moved to the Excited States, after I was here for rough and tough, maybe 5 years, Maddie, I met a particular individual, an entrepreneur, and he looked me straight in the eye and he said, what I'm trying to do by building this company is I want to get on the Forbes 40 under 40 list. You know, they're influential. I don't think it's financial. I think that one's just like who's cool, who are the cool kids.
Yeah, right.
I want to get on that. And I want to be a billionaire. And then he started telling me all the things he wanted to do with the money. And this guy at some point did actually end up making a bunch of money. He then subsequently ended up losing a bunch of money. And I don't know for sure, but I think he may be in financial trouble, but whatever. But when he did end up making money, all he did was talk about how much money he was making and all the shit he was buying. And it was so in your face. The first time I met this individual, it was stunning just to hear this guy talk about money. It was like stunning. Anyway, with that said, I've come to believe that that's not my motivator, is clearly not yours. I don't know that I have as harsh a judgment about it as maybe you just expressed, because the way I look at it is, first of all, look, I'm going to speak for myself. I can't be a hypocrite. Okay. I live in a capitalist system. I was a small E entrepreneur, and then, I would say entrepreneurial in working with in lots of different capacities, but primarily in marketing with big E entrepreneurs. And it would be disingenuous of me to say that there wasn't financial motivation for me. There absolutely was.
Oh, of course. I'd be lying if I said I wasn't. And it's not my leading driver though anymore.
Right.
When it once was.
I absolutely get that. And I get that it's cool now to say that. And I get that there are people who say it who are full of shit. And I would rather, if your motivation's 100% financial, I would rather you be like the guy who the story I just told about and just fucking say it, as opposed to try to put whipped cream on dog shit. Because when you put whipped cream on dog shit and serve it to somebody, they still know it's dog shit.
Yeah. Well, and I think here's another thing I want to add to that, because I don't want that to be misconstrued in the sense of speaking in the text.
Or as Archie Bunker said, misconstrued.
Yeah. Speaking in the context of Silicon Valley and that kind of tech is different than speaking, and we're talking big tech, than speaking in terms of the entrepreneur who may be quote unquote categorized as a big E entrepreneur, yet they're still in a space of creating courses online, becoming an online coach, becoming a professional speaker, becoming an author. They're, this category of entrepreneurship, especially.
When did everybody decide that's what they wanted to do? Like let me be the old guy for a sec.
I have this written down on here.
What do you have written down?
Everybody and their mother is a self-proclaimed something nowadays, right? And
right?
99% of them they're not their own best success story and don't actually live and or do what it is that they're trying to teach you. You got these life coaches and their life is so fucked up, yet they're going to teach you.
I got a great one for you. This one to me is the fucking tipping point. So, the amazing thing that happened with Legends and Losers within a few weeks, I don't remember exactly, but it was probably within the first 3 or 4 weeks, we started to receive pitches either directly from individuals or from PR firms, mostly from PR firms, trying to get folks on the show. And I remember thinking, holy shit. Like, I was very blown away by that, by how quickly it happened.
They don't waste any time.
They don't waste any time. Anyway, so and I mean this in a very it's a grateful way. I really do. We're bombarded with them now, and every once in a while I get grumpy because we want to look at all of them, of course, right? Because that's what we want to do. And every once in a while I get grumpy because I think, why is there so much dog shit coming in? Anyway, that said, we've gotten a few very great ones. And most of all, I want to be clear. We are fucking grateful that anybody gives a shit to even send an email and think that coming on would be good for them. So like, that's fucking awesome.
Yep.
And so anyway, that said, I got one recently, Maddie. You'll love this. The gal is like a motivational speaker gal. And she talks about, coming from nothing and making something of yourself. All good shit.
Great.
And the story she uses is herself. And she went from being broke and whatever she was. And the entrepreneurial success that she's had is being a motivational speaker. And I know, and so she shares her success secrets with you of being a successful entrepreneur. But the only entrepreneurial thing she's done is make herself a speaker. And I just go, what? What are we talking about here? We had General Stanley McChrystal on, and he was the leader of the Allied forces in Afghanistan.
Gosh.
And in his retirement job, the 4-star general, who was a very cool dude. It's an amazing conversation. I couldn't even believe it.
I remember when I was at your house, the general had given you the salute to come on the show.
The general said yes. I was like, wow, the general said yes. How fucking great is that? Anyway, long story longer. So the general now is an entrepreneur. And he started a company called the McChrystal Group. And they do leadership training for senior executives and consulting and so forth. And they're sort of, their mantra, if you will, is sort of battlefield strategies in the boardroom. Okay, well, yeah, excellent. And he's written a bunch of books and he gives speeches. So if you say, hey, we want a motivational speaker or an insightful speaker, or we want an incredible coach consultant to come in here and help us on leadership, then great, hire the general or somebody who has some experience that's germane to what
right.
is going on here in the real world, not somebody who, and look, God bless you for being a successful speaker or whatever, but like,
yeah.
Don't you have to know something? What do you just like read a bunch of fucking Tony Robbins books and become a speaker? I don't understand this. What's going on here, Matthew?
Well, and that's where, these hot words right now of transparency, authenticity, are becoming very I don't want to say stigmatized, but they just don't hold a lot of merit anymore, because who the hell knows what that actually is, because people aren't even transparent anymore. And so that's where, for me, one thing that I really value and want to reflect in my own life too is making sure that I surround myself with people who walk their talk. And
maybe if you're gonna teach, fucking have done something.
Yeah. Yep.
Anyway, hey, and just switching gears maybe a little bit, Maddie. I'd be remiss if we didn't talk a little bit about your incredible podcast. And the truth is, you were a massive inspiration for me. And Colin was always on me. And then when you got on me, that was kind of the tipping point. He may be pissed that I said that I didn't just fucking listen to him, but you know how that goes. Sometimes you can't hear people who are close to you, but you in a very real way were the tipping point. But all that said, so thank you. And why don't you tell me a little bit about how you become an overnight sensation in the podcast world?
I wouldn't definitely know overnight sensation.
I know, I was being facetious.
Yeah, right. It's a work in progress with the learning curve of anything, like, it's an undertaking, as you know. And for me, the podcast, if anybody's going into podcasting to make money, you're out of your damn mind. I'll just say that right now. Because it is not a place to.
You mean we're not gonna have 25?
You're like, wait, hold on, nobody told me that. I'm out of here.
I went to a seminar And they said, as long as you swore a lot and had guitars in the background, you would make $50 million a year in your podcast. Is it, you're telling me that's not true?
Hey, my mom always told me, if you believe it, you can create it. So I have no doubt that you'll make it happen, dude.
No. To be clear, not only is that not my intention, I can't even imagine. I don't even want the hee-haw of dealing with advertisers. Like this is not. I mean, look, I guess never say never, but I mean, it would be a very special set of circumstances.
Right.
Let me put it to you that way.
Same. So why did I get into the podcast? Well, I started the Millionaire Mindcast to kind of give some context to why. Millionaire Mindcast for me meant that you can become a millionaire in your mind, first and foremost, and you can live like a millionaire and cast that vision and that view out into the world of possibilities and live that way, first and foremost. So you can live like a millionaire in all areas of your life without even actually financially, quote unquote, being a millionaire, right? The next part was I joined a Millionaire Mastermind group, one of your best friends and our great buddies and mentors, a guest of the show.
I love how you folks in the real estate industry, you guys love to mastermind your asses off, right?
Oh, yeah.
You're trying to set mastermind world records.
This isn't just a conversation, so Christopher. This is a mastermind.
Yeah, exactly. Like I get invited to like these 2 days of masterminding. Like, so just for a sec here, unpack what the fuck is masterminding?
Masterminding is not
how's it different from masturbating?
You don't want me to unpack that one, I'll tell you that
No,
much.
okay, well,
but in order to keep
every once in a while, my internal voice just goes external, and so anyway.
Masterminding, obviously, if you've read Think and Grow Rich, Napoleon Hill was one of the original kind of individuals who dubbed this concept, if you could call it that, this mastermind of collective minds intentionally coming together to enhance one another and move through a conversation, an idea, a question in a very purposeful way that will lead you to having some kind of enlightenment or plan of action moving forward. At least that's my definition. That's just Matt Aitchinson. So I have no clue what the almanac says. So look it up if you.
But it's essentially a group of people who get together on a periodic but somewhat regular basis and talk about and support each other in their goals. Is that a fair?
Yeah, and it doesn't necessarily have to be an ongoing basis. It can be, I just was in a couples mastermind retreat at a buddy's house where we had a handful of guys and their wives come, and we had an appreciative inquiry summit mastermind where we as a group.
That was a whole lot of self-help jargon right there. We had a what?
We asked, we
had an appreciative inquiry.
Which is what John Berghoff facilitates, which is a new sexy term for masterminding.
John's going to be on Legends and Losers soon. He's unbelievable.
So you guys are in for a treat.
He'll unpack appreciative inquiry.
Yep. So it's another masterminding process that actually has a format and a flow to it. So it's not like, hey, let's all get together and let's quote unquote mastermind and we'll have a look. This is like, hey, we have specific questions we are going to ask as a group. And through this process and through certain activities, we're going to collectively go through our own experience. We're going to share in groups, and then we're going to build on top of each other's stuff and come to some kind of enlightenment on the other side of that question.
And all my kidding aside, it's awesome because, you might remember in our conversation, our episode with Bix Bixen, where he says, a conclusion is the place where you got tired thinking. And so the thing that I think is cool, I these kinds of conversations I've had my whole life. I never called them masterminding. So don't, as Archie Bunker said, misconstrue my kidding around. But what I love about what you're saying is that kind of dialogue. There was one of the books that really influenced me was The Fifth Discipline by Peter Senge. And in it, he unpacks a concept he calls the learning organization. And one of the biggest concepts that I remember from the book is he draws the distinction between what most people do in a typical communication or conversation and what he defines as an authentic dialogue. And here's the difference. He says the unspoken paradigm in most conversations with people is I'm right, you're wrong, and my job is to convince you to come over to my point of view. And if I do, then I win. And that's, or if we agree, then we agree, and we can talk about how awesome we are, and we can tickle each other's nuts, and that's the conversation. But essentially, it's a win-lose kind of paradigm and a right-wrong kind of paradigm, and can be viewed through a competitive lens.
Yeah, this is not a top-down approach. This is a horizontal collective approach, right? Everybody. So John does this for massive organizations where he goes in, right. And it includes the janitor all the way up to the CEO, right? And everybody's got equal say, equal input. So
and the thing about what you're doing is, to just finish the Senge thought, you're having a dialogue, and a dialogue is where we put thoughts, ideas, research, data, whatever it is on the table.
Yep.
And we have a conversation about it called, what do we think about this?
Right.
What do we think about what we're thinking? Or how do we challenge our thinking in each other? And so my only point is, what I love about these kinds of concepts of communication is it's what Senge calls an authentic dialogue, where we're not trying to have a right-wrong discussion. We're actually trying to see if we can learn something together and truly unpack things. And then the other sort of paradigm in that domain that I love is another one Bix shared, which is this incredibly powerful conversation around, he says that most people in most organizations have what he describes as the foreground conversation and the background conversation. Do you remember that?
Mm-mm.
So what he says is, there's a conversation that goes on in the meeting, and then there's the conversation that goes on in the bar or the coffee shop.
Oh yeah, yep.
And which one's the authentic conversation? It's not the one in the meeting.
Right.
You're right. I can remember going to more than one board meeting and talking to a CFO or a CEO, and I would say, "Hey, what's the purpose of this board meeting?" And they would look at me and I go, "The purpose of this fucking board meeting is to get this board meeting over," right? In other words, we're just going to be having the foreground conversation. The background conversation either happened or will happen or is somewhere in between. But don't confuse this board meeting for an authentic conversation. And so, Bix talks about how to have a breakthrough in mastery, of course, is make the background conversation the foreground conversation. Anyway, all that is to say, that to me is, if I connect Bix and Senge, that to me is what I hear when I'm not, being silly, about these dialogues you have. Is that the right way, or how should I think about it?
No, I don't think there's a right and a wrong way to think about it. I think those are key points. And another thing to add into that is just, when we ask ourselves new questions, it leads us to new discoveries. When we ask ourselves the right questions, it leads to the right discoveries, or at least enlightened discoveries. And so that's one thing that John has taught me. John has been a great mentor of reframing questions.
John Berghoff.
Yep, Berghoff. And just reframing questions, and the conversations that come from those are extremely enlightening, and it gives you different perspectives. And so going back to my degree in sociology, that's one thing that it helped me learn, is there are so many different cultures, ethnicities, religions, the list goes on. And so that gave me the perspective that diversity is a good thing. And just because it's not our thing doesn't make it a bad thing. Right. And so that's why I started the Millionaire Mindcast. Was when I was 25, I was highly driven and motivated by money, thinking that when I drew a line in the sand and got on the other side of X, milestone, or X net worth amount, or X whatever, I was going to get this feeling. And so I was constantly chasing that, and money was the vehicle that was going to help me feel that.
I gotta come in here. So I know you made a whole bunch of money. So when you started making the money, did what you think was going to happen by making money happen?
No, hell no.
So what did you
I looked
discover?
at my bank account when I, hit a certain milestone and saw the net worth that I had in a lot of my investment properties, and I went, Does it change how I wake up in the morning? No, not really. Does it change the way I feel about myself? Nope. Don't feel any different.
Still
Does it
take a
change
poop
how
every day?
does it change how I decide to, love on my wife and daughter? Nope, not really. Does it change how I treat my employees at work? No, no. Does it change? Right. So like nothing for me.
Well, yeah,
What
it's
did
like,
change was I felt like I had a little bit more options available to me. And
yeah,
that was fun. But at the end of the day, that didn't change anything for me. What did change for me was when I started hanging around all of these other guys that were, one, intentionally building wealth, but two, it was only like 1/10 of the equation, right?
there's one thing though I would like to drill down on, because I hear a lot of people say similar things. And
Say similar things on
what you just said about money, and not that it didn't really change very
Oh,
much.
yeah, you hear that all the time.
And I want to push on you a little bit, because I'm not sure that's actually quite right, in that, and I don't mean right, wrong, like judgment, but the experience of it, particularly for those of us who come from a little bit more of a struggling place. When you remove the struggle, shit changes.
Mm-hmm.
And, there's some level above that where it doesn't. There's the movie Happy talks about this, that there is some amount of money. I can't remember. I think it was only around $50,000 or $60,000. I say only, living in the Bay Area, that's nothing. Yeah. If you make that a week, you're doing what you need to be doing. And the movie, I can't remember when the movie came out, so it might be a little out of date.
It's a documentary. It's about a 10-year-old documentary.
10. And so, but you remember, right? They say past that number, or past whatever number today, it doesn't mean much. But up to that number, I think when you take struggle, when you're not worried about where the next meal is going to come from, when you're not worried about,
Yep.
I saw something recently. God, I wish I remember the percentage. I remember being blown away by the percentage, but I can't remember what it was that said, how many Americans are not in a financial position to deal with a $500 emergency.
Yep. Yeah, and it's a ridiculous amount too.
So
big number.
I think it's important. I think it's okay. Certainly, obviously, I think it's okay to talk about money now, based on the shock, or I've come a long way from the shock I had when I first moved here about people talking about money. But I think it's irresponsible to say, oh yeah, money doesn't change much. It doesn't change how you and your wife love each other. It doesn't change your relationship with your children. And it doesn't change most of the things that matter in life.
Mm-hmm.
But it can change that, one of the things that matters in life, which is a powerful sense of security and the removal of, what can be a very big struggle. And when you remove those things, you get some peace of mind that is really valuable.
No, I agree. It's a security thing. But what if I were to tell you that if you were broke, going paycheck to paycheck, and I were to tell you that I was going to gift you $10 million, would you think any differently or act any differently?
Well, of course, that's never happened to me, so I can't really answer the question.
Just hypothetically,
what
would be your natural instinct response?
Well, I don't know. What I do know is what I read. Who knows whether it's true or not? Is that most people who win the lotto lose it. Mm-hmm. And I certainly have seen, there's a ESPN documentary out there, I think it's on Netflix, about professional athletes and money. Yep. And that, the overwhelming majority, again, I can't remember the number, but it might be in the 80s. I mean, it was way high up there, of professional athletes are bankrupt or close to bankruptcy within 5 years of the end of their athletic careers. And so here's what I know. If it gets given to you, I think that's not great.
But the reason why I was asking that was, let's say it was gifted to you, but you weren't going to get to touch it for 10 years. How would that impact your mindset around money? How would that impact your mindset around how you feel and think about life? Or
I don't know. I think a lot of people fuck this up. I think, to just finish the thought, the lottery winner didn't earn it and doesn't know how to manage it.
Mm-hmm.
And look, I'm not an expert, but my guess is those two things together probably contribute a lot. And
Yeah,
then
financial fitness and fluency is a big piece of why
right.
people don't know how. A lot of people are great at making money, right? Look at doctors, look at athletes, look at all these people who have great vertical income streams and make a shitload of money. But because they don't have true
Yeah, they
wealth
don't do
knowledge,
defense, right?
they don't. Yeah, exactly.
Great offense, no defense.
Yep.
And I think that's the athlete's problem. I'm not suggesting for a second they don't earn it. But what I am suggesting is when you earn a ton of money like that and you have no background in dealing with it, it's a huge problem.
Yep.
And so anyway, all that is to say, I think the removal of or the addition of security, I think makes a huge difference. And then if you can go a step further in terms of your financial well-being, that then, to use your language, opens up a set of options.
Right. Well, so here, let me circle back around. If you would quit rudely interrupting me, good sir. That's what you do.
The zebras are going to jump.
The zebras are going to jump. The squirrels are raving today. Right?
They
I always
are.
say my squirrels are raving and I'm constantly ready to dance. So to circle that thought back around is I was drawing a line in the sand and I was motivated by money. Then I got exposed to a group of individuals through a mastermind. And we can, mentorship is a big piece of my success formula. And when I was exposed to that, I realized that it wasn't all about drawing a line in the sand and constantly getting to the next milestone. I was able to, and here's a story that ties into that big aha for me. It was day 2. We were in Peru. We were hiking the Inca Trail to Machu Picchu. 4-day hike. You have nothing but time and space to connect with nature, connect with yourself, or connect with the individual that's walking and standing right next to you.
Isn't it awesome when you do a real, no bullshit, in the parlance of our times, legit backcountry hike?
It was spiritual. That was a special.
It takes on that kind of. It takes on a spiritual. You start to feel like you're. I don't know who, Moses, or I don't know who.
Well, we were trekking across 1,000-year-old stones.
Of course,
you know what
right.
I mean? So I remember day 2, we're hiking over Dead Woman's Pass, which is by elevation, the highest part of the hike. It's like 14,000 feet, air's thin. You got a 50-pound pack on your back. And
maybe a little chillier up there.
It was a little cold.
You certainly don't want to be camping up at that elevation, I'm imagining.
Which we weren't camping at that elevation. We were camping at about 10, which was still cold.
So you were trying to get up over the pass.
We were getting up over and then down to the other side. So being in the competitive group of guys that were in, a couple guys wake up, I'm going to be the top to Dead Woman's Pass. So I'm like, I'm going to be the top to Dead Woman's Pass. So I set this goal. I set this milestone that, okay, when I get to the top of Dead Woman's Pass, I can stop. I can, take a minute to kick my feet up, look around on what's going on me, but I got a goal and I'm marching towards that goal. I'm ready to charge the hill. Now a lot of people can probably apply this to their entrepreneurial journey, whether you're, in tech, whatever you're in, set a goal. I'm committed and focused to that goal. And I'm going to put blinders on and do whatever I got to do to get to that goal. Then when I get to the other side of the goal, I'll reassess what's going on and we'll set a new goal, right? So I'm marching to the top of this hill. There's 3 of us. And I'm sweating my ass off. I'm tired, short of breath, mosquitoes everywhere, 50-pound pack. And I got to the top. Me and another guy tied. And I end up stopping. And we chatted for a little bit. I'm looking around and going, man, this is one of the most beautiful, amazing views I'm probably ever going to see in my life. Like, stop and take a moment to soak this up. And then I realized in that moment, as I was soaking it up and being present and enjoying this journey that I'm on, I see other little guys in groups who took their time, start trickling in. Some guys are hugging. Some guys are sharing amazing stories that, were inspiring and laughing. Other guys were showing pictures that they took together where they stopped and talked and, had these enlightening experiences. And I realized that I missed out on all this beauty that was going on around me on the journey to the destination. And I needed to stop and smell the roses and know that the journey, right? We all hear this, is equally as important, if not way more important than whatever destination we're getting to. And so when I got surrounded by a group of individuals that said, dude, you don't need to
Here's the only thing about that. So I agree with that, but I think it's an important but. It's very easy to say that once you've had the experience you just said.
Right.
It's very hard to tell somebody who hasn't gotten what you got there to enjoy the journey. Because I remember when I used to hear it as a younger man, it just used to piss me off. Because no, I need to fucking get to this place. Because until I do, it's going to make me crazy. I have a chip on my shoulder. I got shit I need to prove. And of course, I thought I was proving it to the world. It had nothing to do with the world, of course.
Right.
In martial arts, it's often said, there's only one opponent, and it's you. And I guess my point though is, having gotten to a couple of destinations in life, I can look at it in hindsight and say that. And today, for me, it actually is all about the journey. And this might just be me, I don't know. But for the most part, when I was in my 20s and 30s, when I heard that, it would just piss me off. You're like, fuck you. I got some destination I need to get done here.
Very true. That's very true. But I think it also, at the same time, it is important to highlight the fact that because I was exposed to that, I thought differently about it. Whether I experienced it in that moment or I heard someone else share that same lesson or journey, right? And so why I started the podcast was because I started getting exposed to things that made me realize, one, I needed to enjoy the journey more. Two, it wasn't all about money. And three, I could have it all. I am no different than you. You are no different than me. Which we are, right? We're different human beings, but at the end of the day, we all are human beings on this earth that have the ability to make small, smart choices consistently over an extended period of time, and to create something and get results in our life that mean something to us. Everybody has a different definition of that, but if we make small, smart choices consistently over an extended period of time, that's the game that I've figured out I need to be playing. If you're in tech and you have the ability to have those lightning strike opportunities in life, fuck yeah, that's awesome. That's your space. Own it and make small, smart choices consistently over an extended period of time. It may pan out for you. You can also do a lot of other things along the way to make sure that if that lightning strike happens or not, you're still setting yourself up for the long-term game to succeed. And so that's what I wanted to do. And as I started knowing that I'm playing this tortoise and hare race, I'm going into life now with this mindset that I'm going to be hitting more singles than I am going to be hitting the doubles or the triples or the home runs or the grand slams, which they may come if I keep doing small, smart choices consistently over an extended period of time, that I'm at least putting myself in the batter's box to swing and get on base. And I'm sure as hell going to strike out a lot, but if I do this with the crock pot mentality of there's going to be a long, nice.
I haven't heard crock pot in a very long time.
I have the mindset of
the
a crock
slow
pot.
Cooker.
Yep, I'm a slow cooker. I'm going to throw in ingredients and know that it's going to take some time to make that nice dish.
Isn't it interesting? You have the slow cooker mindset, and yet in a decade, not only did you transform your life, but
and things are just getting going.
Everything about it is different. You've created a family. And that's in 10 years.
Yeah. So I look at if I do this for the next 30 or 40 or 50.
It might feel like slow cooker, week to week or month to month. But when you wake up and you go, hey, shit, I was kind of a douchebag getting arrested like not that long ago.
Yeah, well, now, so that was what I think a lot of millennials or just people in general, I don't even want to stereotype millennials because I am one. Many of us in the entrepreneurial space, based on our personality profiles, we have the microwave mindset. where we want those quick results. We pace in front of the damn microwave and we're getting an expedited meal already. If we were to shift our mindset and commit to the process of our craft, of our expertise, like when I think of you and, Master Elliot is not going to teach you as your sensei to do 10,000 moves 3 times. He's going to probably first teach you to do 3 moves 10,000 times. So that's kind of the mindset of, I want to master the disciplines and principles and the core values in my life and see how I can amplify them, 10x them, turn them up as high as I possibly can to new levels that lead me into new discoveries of myself and new reinventions of who I am. And most importantly, make sure I'm enjoying the journey. And so when I was able to get exposed to other individuals doing that, which this was a quote unquote millionaire mastermind group, which it's much more than just money, I was realizing that the impact it was having on me by being exposed to these conversations was priceless. I mean, I couldn't put a dollar amount on it. Not only financially of the success I was seeing in my business by being exposed to this stuff, but also, more importantly, my life and how it was blossoming into something freaking awesome that I was proud of.
Isn't it interesting what you put in your mind is what you get out of your life?
So I wrote this down because I know you're going to like this. And I was reading this article the other day, and it shared this analogy. And I know you're a gardener. You and Carrie, you guys like gardening.
I hang out in the garden.
Well, you try to garden. And Carrie is the master greener.
Yeah, don't be confused.
And our brain, our mindset, in my opinion, is like a garden. Weeds grow very easily in gardens, and it takes a lot of time and attention and love and the right ingredients and the right environment to grow beautiful flowers and beautiful vegetation. But those weeds, man, they can grow without you giving a shit every single day. So you have to weed your brain daily. You have to improve your environment daily. You have to be 1% better every single day. And if I can do that for 365 days a year and compound that year after year after year, then that sounds like I'm moving in a direction that I'm going to be proud of. And so when I was able to get exposed to that and see that when I committed to it, which there's a lot of other variables in my situation that may be different than yours or the next person's, but there's some common themes. There's some common practices and principles that we can all learn from. And so I wanted to interview other people like you, and you've been on the show, one of our most downloaded episodes, and a lot of other successful people that they're intentional about, 1, creating wealth, but 2, more importantly, so the wealth is not just money.
With your podcast, you just took your masterminding and stuck it on the internet, didn't you?
Yeah, and then it kind of just took off from there, and we got some good feedback and response.
And thousands and thousands and tens and thousands of people now are
downloading it every month.
Downloading it every month.
Yep, and it's amazing.
So it turns out thousands and tens and thousands of people want a mastermind, and they want a mastermind with Matt A.
Well, not just in general, people give a shit about their life now. And because, and I don't want to say now because people have always cared. People give a shit about their life and actually have somewhere to go to learn how to improve it now.
Well, and this kind of a conversation is we're able to have this kind of a conversation in a very broad way today. Mm-hmm. That was not true 30 years ago.
Nope.
When I first started to do personal development work, because I had a lot of Samsonites to unpack, you could bring this stuff up at dinner and, half or 2/3 of the table would be upset and or confused and or just wish you would stop.
It's still actually very common, right? We live in this little bubble where the people we have surrounded ourselves with and chose to architect our lifestyle design around, this is the normal. This is the norm.
There's no excuse today for being stupid. No. When you have the top universities in the world putting, if not all, huge components of their curriculum free. So if you want the education without the piece of paper, you can get it. Podcasting, I don't care what you're fired up about. There's an expert in the world giving their expertise away for free on a podcast.
Yep.
And of course, all the great audiobooks we have, and there's there are more new business books and self-help books, and really there's more people writing and publishing and producing content on one sort or another on virtually every topic. And so there's just no excuse, and people sharing, and no excuse for being stupid anymore.
Yeah, you just got to make sure you plug into the right community. So I wanted to, this was a pure passion project for me. It wasn't for finances. It wasn't for anything. It was one.
And how does it feel to be an internet star now, a podcast
I
star?
wouldn't say it's an internet star. I would just say it's a blessing to be able to connect with so many thought leaders and heart-centered individuals that care more about money, but also use their money and their intentionality behind making money to go out and have a massive impact in the areas that they're passionate about.
Yeah.
And so to be able to connect with people like that is a beautiful blessing. To be able to have these conversations and be enlightened myself selfishly is an amazing byproduct.
Sure is great.
And then the last piece of it is, and probably the most important piece of it, is to give people that never had access to this information, this conversation, this thought, to give them that power to implement something in their life and see a result that is different than they've gotten before, and have that light bulb go off.
Ba-boom.
That is worth every hour and cent that I put into this. I lose money every month on my podcast. I pay to add value because I love it and I'm connected to it. And so I wrote, I'm always like turning random words into acronyms and weird shit, right? And so I use this word epic a lot. You love legendary. I love legendary. I feel like I use epic a lot as well. And I was thinking about, well, what does epic mean to me? Like, what is an epic life? What is an epic friendship? What's an epic relationship? Whatever you want to call it. Did I show up in an epic way today? And I think of, for me, epic is experiential. How did I engage with that experience? Participatory. So that kind of goes back to the engagement, like being there, being in it, playing full out, turning the volume up. The I stands for impact or influence. How can I infuse some value into this situation and leave it better than it was before, right? Even if it's one little comment, a smile, a high five, a hello, some great piece of information, whatever it is. And then the last one is connection or connected, being connected. And so I want to make sure I show up every damn day in an epic way in whatever I do. And that's the environment and the path and the ripple effect that I leave behind. If it impacts one person, fuck yeah. That's worth it to me. If it impacts thousands and millions, which is my goal, then that is something that I know I can be proud of, and money has nothing to do with that.
And Matty A, I think on that note, I don't know how we could do any better than that. Why don't we kick out of this wave?
Love the legendary community, and it's an honor to be able to share some time with you guys today. And Chris, what you and Colin are doing here, it's fun to be a part of and fun to watch. So I'm a student and learning just like everybody else on this show.
Well, you're my inspiration, and you've been an incredible mentor to me with Legends and Losers, and in life. And it's been great spending some time together and doing a little surfing together and misbehaving a little bit together. And may it continue for many years on all those fronts.
We're just getting started.
Thank you, brother.
Cheers.
Be legendary. Whew. All right. There it is. Thank you, Matty, for being on the show. You're an extraordinary, extraordinary human being. If you like this episode, guys, you'll love episode 9 and 10. It's a two-parter with the legendary Skip Jansen called From Loser to Legend. And Skip walks you through how he was, quote unquote, a loser until he was 38 years old, got his shit together, and today he's got an extraordinary life. And it is one of the most raw, authentic, and real conversations I've ever been a part of. Episode 9 and 10 with Skip Jansen from Loser to Legend. Some shout outs now to my dear friend and colleague in the past, Alan Barber, for a fantastic LinkedIn post about Play Bigger. Appreciate it. And I'm stoked to hear you getting so much out of the book. And to Caroline Plum on Twitter, she recently tweeted out a great, if I'm remembering right, it was a great photo. And she said, just finished Play Bigger, one of the best business books I've read. So high praise coming from you, Caroline. Thank you so much. And thanks for sharing it on Twitter. Also want to thank all of you for your reviews, for sharing on social media, and for telling your friends, for giving Legends and Losers away as a birthday gift, which I think is a very cool idea. If you remember in the past, we used to give DVD box sets and shit like that. So, hey, Legends and Losers is a great last minute gift idea. And God knows the price is right. And all of those things that you're doing are really expanding our audience. Think about something simple. If every single person who listens to and subscribes to Legends and Losers were to ask one other person to do the same, but boom, the audience would be doubled. And, you're driving our numbers. And so we really appreciate you doing that. Sabrina Horn of the Finn Partners on episode 27, she said that Legends and Losers was, quote, the podcast Silicon Valley needs, and none other than the legendary author, podcaster, and speaker Hal Elrod said that Legends and Losers will go down in history as one of the greatest podcasts of all time. And your sharing is what's making that happen. So again, thank you for that. Also want to let you know that I'm going on tour with our friends at NetSuite, the Next Ready Business Tour. For information and dates and your personal invitation, because these are executive invitation only events, go to legendsandlosers.com/NetSuite tour. And you'll see a little form there, and there you can request your invitation. Or you can just send an email, blackhole@legendsandlosers.com, subject invitation, and we'll get you connected. So the dates are San Diego, August 24th, Toronto, September 19th, New York, September 20th, Denver, Colorado, September 26th, and Smoking Hot Miami on November 9th. Please subscribe on iTunes, Stitcher, or YouTube. And of course, check out legendsandlosers.com. Remember, this podcast is not free. It costs you 2 minutes to give us a legendary review. And we'd love it if you joined us on Facebook at facebook.com/groups/legends and losers, on Twitter at legends losers, and again, the email blackhole@legendsandlosers.com. We would like to thank HarperCollins Instant Classic, Play Bigger: How Pirates, Dreamers, and Innovators Create and Dominate Markets. Equity Directory, connecting startups to the talent and resources they need to build a legendary business. Our good friends at onelifefullylive.org, the nonprofit that helps you dream, plan, and live your best life. DeVry University, making a difference since 1931. The legendary 1185 design. There's a reason Silicon Valley's greatest brands go through the doors of 1185. Interview Valet, podcast interview marketing. Get your ass on some podcasts and get some business done at Interview Valet. Habitat for Humanity, building new futures. Mike Block Realtor, make your Santa Cruz dream come true at mikeblock.com. The Millionaire Mindcast, the awesome hit podcast with our friend and today's guest, Matty A. Brother James, motivational music for your next event. The hit book, No Barriers, A Blind Man's Journey to Kayak the Grand Canyon by our friend and guest, Eric Weinemeyer. PursuingResults.com, the producers of legendary podcasts and this one. And the good people at kiva.org, loans to entrepreneurs all around the world that change lives. Today's information is provided to you solely for informational purposes. This oddcast is the sole property of the Legends and Losers Oddcast Network, and we love it when you share the shit out of it. We also must warn you that every Legends and Losers is produced in a studio that does contain nuts, and it's never tested on animals. Teach entrepreneurship. Don't be lame. Get out of the passing lane. Introduce two people you love to two podcasts you love. Listen to the Tragically Hip. Thank you, and God bless you, Jack O'Neill. Be nice to your sister. Don't believe everything you think. And hey, Colin, this oddcast really ties the room together. Our apologies go out to SAP CEO Bill McDermott. Sorry, Bill. We just ran out of time for you. Thanks, and we'll see you again soon on Legends and Losers.